Seagulls.
Do you know that'll be the most popular bit of the podcast? The podcast is, to me, is a brilliant combination of football and comedy.
Part of what we wanted to do with Big Kick was sort of go, this is for all of us. So we're hopefully bringing people in and going, oh, you don't need to feel stupid here. It's okay if you don't know.
You tell us about your playing career, Maisie. I know
Jorginho Ruta went past.
Yeah?
Leeds legend. I just stared at. No, I went. I crumbled.
Yeah.
Susie was like, "Are you all right?"
Yeah.
So the Brighton and Hove Albion official podcast is making a new friend today. The Big Kick Energy podcast. More specifically, Maisie and Susie, you are podcasting royalty.
Stop it, Paul.
You flirt.
Do you know what? I'm just trying to transfer all the pressure on you to make this show good, all right?
Yeah,
so you
we can feel it.
You take it from here. I'm going to go and get a coffee, all right? But so you're both football nuts, you're football podcasters, you're football fans, and I think you both play, don't you? I know you do, Maisie. Do you play as well, Susie?
Not well. I like a kickabout.
She'll give it a good go.
But I'm not in a team or anything.
Why don't you play in Maisie's team?
Because I don't want to embarrass her. You know, she's younger than me and people would assume that meant that she's sort of fitter and better on the ball. But I think just sort of naturally I've probably got more about me.
You reckon?
Probably not.
Wow.
Probably not. No.
This is why I haven't brought her to my team. She'll give it all that.
Well, they haven't stopped ringing me, babe. I keep saying, oh, look, I can't do that to Maisie. She's a friend.
Why don't you go in as coach, head coach?
There we go.
Don't encourage her.
Technical director or something.
Yeah, I'd love that. I could wear jeans and a sports jacket.
You'd love that. You'd just love having the power to sub me off.
Oh, hononestly, nothing would give me more joy.
At 7 minutes.
No, I tell you what, I'd love to be a ref.
Oh, yeah.
You're off. No, I saw
you'd be
that.
spicy as a ref as well. She wouldn't like back chat. She'd be absolute Clinton
And I've got
cards.
the shirt.
Oh yeah, and she's got the shirt. There is not a shirt Suzi Ruffell doesn't have.
No,
Paul.
that's not true.
Go on. This will be her opportunity to list the ones that she'd still like.
Yeah, I want the full list.
Yeah.
I haven't got Manchester United. This is for the WSL.
Do you want Manchester United?
No, she does not.
But I've sort of made a bit of a... Now, listen, I think that listeners should know I am a new football fan. I'm very much into the women's game. It's something that our podcast began because Maisie is a lifelong football fan and I didn't grow up in a footballing family. No one in my family is really into football. And I became a fan because Maisie and I are really, really good friends. And she said, I think you'd love football. It's mad to me that you're not a big fan of football. So we started watching together during the World Cup and we began our podcast, Big Kick Energy, with me sort of learning about the game. And it was sort of, we thought it might be fun to put together a podcast that is for new fans of football. And now what has happened is I've got very into football and I go to a lot of the women's games. And I might have a few of the different shirts. I support Brighton, but I've also got a few other shirts. And Maisie seems to find this really annoying.
I've created a monster, Paul. That's what, like when Frankenstein makes the monster and it sort of comes back to bite him on the arse. That's what's happened here with you, Suze, is you've got really into football. And don't get me wrong, I'm proud. She lives for it now. But her and I have very different opinions on how many teams you can get the shirts on.
You're more of a toxic fan. I think that's
yeah. I will concede that.
You don't mean plastic, you mean toxic.
Yeah.
It's actually toxic. Right,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just have a pop at her if she... every time we have a new episode, sometimes we have to record remotely because we're in different parts of the country, and just suddenly the camera will appear and she's there this week in an Arsenal shirt, and then the next week we record and she's in Lewis or Liverpool. One week she was wearing a ref shirt.
Just for a laugh.
Is it a kind of one game idea, that all teams are the same and you'll support
Well,
them?
it's just sort of quite... I just think it's quite fun.
Every time she goes, I'm just a fan of the game. I'm just a fan of the game.
But I mean, the truth is, I'll go and see Brighton and Hove more than anyone else, and it is where I live, and it is why I love to support them. And also, we're having, things are really on the up. The first half of the season was maybe slightly better, but we're having a good time. And but it is. It's mainly really fun to annoy Maisie by sort of, saying, what's the problem with me wearing a Liverpool shirt? And then she'll go, oh, I can't believe you're wearing that shirt. And then quite often I like to have another shirt on underneath. So halfway through the episode, I might take off my Liverpool shirt and I'm wearing my Spurs one. What's the problem with that?
It's clearly triggering. I can see that.
Yeah.
You tell us about your playing career, Maisie. I know
Oh,
I'm going to call it
there
a
you
career.
go.
I'm going to call it a career.
That's overly
She
generous.
always said if it wasn't for her knee, she'd be pro. That's what she said. She's always said
I
it.
am not one of those.
She is. She says
I'm not a coulda goner.
She said honestly, I could have gone pro.
Could have been
but
someone.
Could have been a contender.
Yeah.
Yeah, she said
No.
Serena would have had my mobile if it wasn't for that dodgy knee.
Trust me, that has never been on the cards. I played it as a kid, Paul. I played it as a kid outside of school and then in school for a bit, but then it just was completely cut out of the curriculum in high school. So played it for a bit, and then it was kind of frustrating because when I was a kid, it was like the football team was either it was a standard of like you either need to be pursuing this with everything you've got, i.e. you need to be. I mean, we're talking at this point sort of 2010, so it was like you need to be trying to get a scholarship in America, you know.
Yeah.
You need to be trying to think about moving to the States age 16, full bend it like Beckham, or stop. You know, there wasn't really the sort of middle ground space, which is always where I've comfortably sat in every aspect of life. So I sort of stopped playing in my late teens. There was no, I remember like even at uni, there was a lads football team that wasn't a women's football team. I really, really missed it. And throughout all of this time, was still watching it week in, week out. Leeds were having an absolute shocker throughout this period. And then it was when I moved to Brighton, which was 2017. And I didn't know anybody in Brighton.
So she kept turning up here and they kept saying, just go away.
So
Please
eventually I
go
got
away.
banned from the Lancing training facilities. But I didn't know anyone, and I thought, you need to sort of, it feels like sort of ridiculous to say as a grown-up, but you need to like join some extracurricular club type things.
Yeah.
So I joined a football team, and it was by far the best thing I did when moving to Brighton, because first of all, you meet a load of new people, but it was also that standard that I'd always been craving and at, which was like people that were, you know, weren't just sort of lobbing it with their toes in any direction. People who knew how to play and could play well, but also were under no illusion that none of us were ever going to get scouted by Wiegman. So it's lovely, and it's still the highlight of my week. Play every single week when I'm not on tour. Even now, like when we're doing this podcast, I'm on tour at the moment, and the biggest thing I miss when I'm away for all this time is the training on a Tuesday night and a game on the Sunday. Like when you're in the car on the way to a regional theatre and your phone keeps pinging, and it's just all of your teammates giving you updates on the score. It's absolute hell. You have the biggest FOMO. So and I absolutely love it, and the team are great. The team are great.
Suzi, I don't think you can get out of this much longer, can you? I mean, what a sale.
I know,
Didn't she
it's
sell
brilliant,
it?
isn't it? Yeah, totally. I just don't know whether is 39 too old to start?
Also, and you know this, I've told you this, I play for so Brighton Seagulls is my league team, but then I've joined a little five-a-side, which is, no offence here, Suze, but a lot of 40-year-old mums.
Okay, that's not me until next year. Okay.
So, the space for you.
The
The space
space.
for you. I think that's what's so lovely, though, now, genuinely, is and I think it's probably a lot to do with, you know, what happened in 2022 with the Lionesses and the Euros, but football, whatever age, whatever ability, whatever point in life, whatever your previous relationship to football, it's now at that point where it's such a normalised thing to take up. It's like deciding to go to the gym one day. There was a time definitely where if you said, I want to join a football team, people would go, well, where would you start? Where'd you go? And you've not played before. You need to be good to play football. Like now, whoever you are, there is a space for you to play football.
Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? I was telling Suzi I've started playing walking football, and it's mixed. It's women over 40, men over 50, and you know what? Nobody even notices the gender divide. It's just it's just a load of people playing a game on a Monday
so
night,
inclusive.
and then going to the pub afterwards.
Yeah.
And that's it. There is no gender in it. It's fantastic.
We've had people write in who play walking football.
Yes,
haven't
we have.
Yeah. It looks fantastic.
Yeah.
I'd be quite tempted to give it a go.
Yeah, why don't you? Well, you're not ready for it yet because you're still running around, aren't
Yeah,
you?
you're too young.
Yeah, you go first, Suze.
You got to be decrepit to play it, really. But
Brilliant, Suze. There you are.
They're going to hate me for saying that, aren't they? My fellow walking footballers. But I mean, you're so busy. It's a wonder you do get time to play as much as you do. You're both on tour quite intensively, aren't you? At the moment, as we speak, in fact.
Yeah, my tour sort of kicks off in earnest in June, but Maze is on tour.
I'm in the throes of it now.
Yeah.
But also, like, yeah, you're right. Like, even before tour, you're going here, there, and everywhere to get it ready. You're even when we're recording this, you're off to London tonight to do 2 gigs on the trot just to practice out these jokes that I've told her already won't work.
But like, I'm not on tour at the moment. But last week I had 6 gigs.
You can practice them in here if you want.
No, I'm fine. Thank you so much.
Go on. Yeah, it is hard. It is hard. But I think also that's nice about football is it's that I like the routine of it. Whether it's playing or watching, it's that staple in your week. It's every weekend there's something to either watch or play or, you know, take part in some way. And I think I like that, having this job where you're where routine isn't really the same. You know, you don't really have that of like we're in different places every single night. You'll have gigs that feel like $1 million and then gigs that feel like really hard work, and gigs on your doorstep, gigs the other end of the country. There's no routine to it, so it's quite nice to have something that's regular and kind of, you know, you can align yourself with a club. It feels your thing. It's nice. It's nice.
You just saw the men's first team walk through looking like gladiators. You know, they've got a big game on tomorrow night.
Paul, I lost it.
Did you?
Yeah, because Jorginho Ruta went past.
Yeah.
Leeds legend.
Did you? I hope
I
you
just
spoke to
stared
him.
at. No, I went.
No,
I crumbled.
Yeah.
Suzi was like, "Are you all right?"
Yeah, it was weird. It was creepy, I think.
Was it embarrassing?
The mouth breathing was too much.
Oh.
More Albion legend than Leeds legend now. I think he's moved on. You know.
Yeah, well, he's moved on. We haven't. We're still devastated. But yeah, he's brilliant.
But while I'm thinking about you performing, I mean, performance pressure is a really interesting thing. So these guys that walk through the canteen here, every time they step on the pitch, bang, it hits them.
Yeah.
It must be a bit like that going on stage, particularly with new material. You know, I mean, a comedian's life. Everybody wants to laugh at a comedian, but also when you stop and think about it, you're looking at a comedian on stage, thinking, "Christ, I'm glad that's not me up there."
Yeah.
You know, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
It's funny. That is often what people will say when you're being interviewed or if you're chatting to someone that you don't know very well, and they'll say, "Oh God, I would hate your job. I would hate to do what you." It's so visceral.
Yeah.
People could, "Oh God, I'd hate to be a comedian. Oh, the idea of trying to make people laugh." And I think it's something that you just sort of get used to.
Yeah.
And also, I think the pressure is a buzz, you know. And I'm sure there's people that, both in sports and sort of any sort of entertainment, that there are people that thrive on that buzz, thrive on that pressure.
It's
and
adrenaline, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's people that, you know, I remember seeing comedians when I was coming through who were very good, but they couldn't deal with the nerves, and then they stopped.
Yeah.
Right.
But you know, you've got to, you know, that has to be, and I'm sure there's people that are amazing in training, and then you know, they get under the floodlights and it doesn't quite come together, and it's but yeah, it's for me, it's always been a real thrill.
Yeah, and I think you have to have it, and the same way sometimes people can buckle. I think, and I reckon you see this in sport as well. If you're too comfortable, if you don't have the nerves, if you're swanning up to a theatre thinking, "I've got this, no problem," I can almost guarantee you're going to have a shocker.
You sound like Pickford then. No problem, no problem.
No problem, no problem. Like, you're going to have an absolute shocker. And I think it's the same, you know, we see it sometimes with players. They kind of get a bit comfortable in their position in the
arrogance.
squad. It's an arrogance, You kind of think, I'm grand. No, you need that terror, you need that adrenaline, controlled for sure. You don't want to buckle, but it's finding that sweet spot, isn't it?
And like, to link it to football, we were talking about this on the journey here today.
Yeah.
Yesterday there was the announcement for the women's team that are going up to St George's Park for the upcoming games, and for the England squad. And we were saying, you know, with Serena Wiegmann, there's never guarantees. There'll be people you go, well, Beth Mead's going to be in there, Lucy Bronze is going to be in there, but you know, there's certain people like Chloe Kelly that's not in the team this time, and that I guess that's a way of keeping that arrogance at bay.
Yeah,
where
keeping the
people
nerves
constantly feeling. And obviously, it's such fantastic news that Nikita Paris, Brighton player, who's had a brilliant season here, has been named in that lineup. I was absolutely thrilled. I was
so good.
Actually shouted.
Yeah.
I was so. I was like, yes, go on, yes. It was.
But it's true. Like, she's persevered, and she's not got complacent. She's really, really pushed herself through. So I think
And what a great message about sports, about what it can be, about what it is to young people, where you go, oh, she's not been in the squad for 3 years, but she moved clubs, got the minutes, proved that she was worth that spot.
Yeah.
And I was absolutely thrilled. I was buzzing for her.
You know how tribal people are in football. Have you noticed some people watch international football? I'm not saying that you just
No.
did that, but only through the prism of their club allegiance.
Yeah.
So if their player's not
Right.
starting every game,
Oh, my God.
they start having a go at the manager and think, why are you so angry with the manager? And they go, oh, he's an Arsenal fan and he's
Yeah.
left out the Arsenal player.
Yeah.
You think, it's incredible, the tribalism.
It's so funny.
Yes, it
it's
is.
so funny. Like,
And
I love reading the comments when in men's or women's football when an international squad is announced, and there's always people just like, especially in women's football, the Gooners, they're straight in there being like, you've got to have Williamson, you've got to have Mead, you've got to, and you're like, you an Arsenal fan by any chance?
Yeah. And if you don't, it's a personal insult to me
Yeah.
if you don't play those players.
I always find it so, I mean, on social media as well, as you say, it is so tribal and it's so visceral. When people are so furious, I do always think, who is that for?
Yeah.
Like, do they think that they're going to that someone's at the BBC is going to go, well, seeing as Lineker's off in a couple of weeks, do you think that we should get this very abusive man from Dagenham?
Do you know what, though?
I think he's got some lovely ideas.
It makes me think, because we've been comparing football to the comedy. I'd quite like it if, when like comedy lineups were announced, if there were certain fans going, it's outrageous Suzi Ruffell's not made this lineup. She's had a cracking season of gigs.
She's kept working at it.
Yeah, you could.
She had a tricky start, she lost a couple.
And don't get me wrong, before a gig, Suzi is like a player in the tunnel, aren't you? She sings the national anthem from the wings.
You've said, what's
Before
your
every
routine?
gig, she's
Stretching?
there.
Do any stretching?
Well, actually, it's funny you should say that, but because I'm so physical on stage, I do sort of jump around a bit.
Yeah.
On the podcast,
You'll pull something if you don't warm up before. You are so physical
I'm
on
so
stage.
physical. I mean, but if you can't get a laugh, like, basically, I think it's a free laugh. If I make people laugh with words, and then I do an act out, it's sort of two for the price of
She
one.
loves a lunge. She loves a lunge, does Ruffell.
Yeah, I can't help myself. But the thing I was going to say was we gave each other nicknames on the podcast, Pacey and Goosey.
I noticed that.
Because of what we do pre.
Oh yeah, we were reading like an article, I think, about on the podcast about what certain
People
players
put in
do
left sock
before
and then right sock,
their
whatever
routines, their little, you know, how they are before a game,
and superstitions, as well.
And then we were chatting about what we're like before a game, and I get goosebumps before every gig.
Even
I go
on the
really
hottest day of
cold.
the year. Right. It's really weird.
Yeah, get really cold, goosebumps everywhere.
It's almost like your body saying, "Don't do it,
is
Maisie. Don't do
is that
it."
sheer terror or what?
I think it might be. And then you just can't. Suzi can't sit
keep
still.
Okay.
She's just pacing round like a lion at the zoo, just pacing round like this all the time,
Biting people.
Biting
I mean, that's. But that has stopped.
I'm so glad you explained that.
Yeah, I'm sorry
yeah.
about
I was
that.
looking at Pacey and Goosey thinking, I haven't got a clue what that's about.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's we sometimes forget that people don't know.
No.
We just start we did some live shows and we had Sophie Bagley on even.
that's fun.
But like sometimes you have to remember that obviously these players, they don't listen to the podcast, they don't know, and we're there going,
We're
"Hi,
Pacey
we're Pacey and Goosey."
Although that has been fun because we've asked people to give us their nicknames.
Yes.
Which we've had some very.
There's been some corkers.
God,
So
we've had some good
Yeah,
ones.
yeah, yeah.
There was a guy that was called Biscuit because he was bold and called Gary, and he was Garibaldi, and then people just started calling him Biscuit,
Do you
which we
remember
liked.
the person that was called Mortgage?
Oh, Mortgage was the funniest one.
They had
Yeah.
a lazy eye, and what was it?
They worked in a bank, and someone in the bank said, "One of your eyes is fixed rate and the other's variable." Honestly, I was hysterical. We had to sort of pause for a minute because it was so great because we weren't taking the mick out of that person.
No, he'd offered it up.
They'd
He'd
offered it up,
up.
and we were just. Oh my God,
I
the
couldn't breathe.
audience! It was
couldn't breathe.
it was so much fun.
I think that was the one where we had Rachel Daly, so we were there trying to like stop laughing so we could crack on with this interval. But she was laughing as well. We were all creasing.
Yeah,
weren't we?
it was like the day after she had announced her retirement from international football. So we
Yeah.
were like, "This is quite, But then we just kept being, she just kept being like, "I can't believe you're called Mortgage." You'd be like, "Yeah, let's go back to that."
Well, we've all got people we've known for 30 years. We know them by their nickname. And if somebody says, what's their real name? You
Yeah.
go, I don't know.
Dunno.
Actually. He's just Banksy or...
No,
Yeah.
no, exactly.
Oh, you know
Exactly.
Banksy?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. Right, yeah, bad example. So the podcast is, to me, is a brilliant combination of football and comedy, but also... And there's politics in there because when you need to get stuck in, you get stuck in, don't you? And it's brilliant to hear that. But it's good to know that you can sort of mess around with football and enjoy it, but also be serious about it in the same space, can't you? And you two have mastered the art of that. What was the
kind
formula
to say.
you were kind of aiming at?
I think we wanted it to be a celebration of women's football. We wanted to be able to bring in new fans. So as I mentioned before, I'm quite a new fan of football. And when I first got into it, and I enjoy watching men's games as well. I'm not as into it, but if it's on now, I'll watch it in a way that I wouldn't have a few years ago. But I did find that there was, as we were mentioning before about tribalism, you know, I'd say, oh yeah, I saw that match or I enjoyed that match. And you would find some people would be like, you sort of make out like it wasn't for you because you hadn't been a lifelong fan, or that there was some sort of, you didn't have the ownership of it. And so I guess part of what we wanted to do with Big Kick was sort of go, oh, this is for all of us. And especially with women's football, there's so many new fans that people felt like, oh, I didn't really know much about the game, or, oh God, I don't really understand what an aggregate is. And there's certain things where I can turn to Maisie and it's in a really friendly way of going, well, I don't understand, why do they play this many legs in the Champions League and how does that work, and why are we so worried about Barca? And Maisie's got all of that information, and so it's quite nice that I think hopefully we make people laugh and we've got the facts about football and the news, but also we're hopefully bringing people in and going, oh, you don't need to feel stupid here. It's okay if you don't know. You know, and so is that fair, Mace?
Yeah, definitely. I also think, you know, you can't really have football discussions without politics coming in some way, whether that's the men's game or the women's. You know, we celebrate the good sides of the game, but we also address the negative sides. And I think especially with the women's game, with its growth, it's experiencing fantastic highs, don't get us wrong, but there's sometimes little things that are creeping through that I recognise from being a fan in the men's game, and I don't want it in the women's. I don't want
Can
it.
you give us some examples of that?
Toxic fan culture.
Yeah.
I don't.
Horrible chanting.
Yeah, horrible chanting, homophobia, racism, a sort of a sense of possession from the fans of these players and not seeing them as people. And we've seen this recently. Millie Bright's had to come out and say, you know, I was taking photos with Chelsea fans after the game and I could hear people telling
me off.
Yeah, you know, telling me I was... Bunny Shaw has abstained from an FA Cup game because of the racist abuse. She's had coins thrown at her. Yeah. And if we want the women's game to grow in a way that reflects the size and the investment and the platform that the men's get, I believe that is possible without having to substitute in the values that it currently has and end up kind of reflecting a lot of the toxicity that the men has. And that's not me going in on the men's game. I think the men's game can be brilliant and I think it can change, but it has to have stuff called out and it has to have active kind of initiatives from clubs and fans determined to make that change. Just because it's got a history of having these chants or a history of feeling like that's okay to behave like that at a game doesn't mean that we continue it. We should be able to get to a point where we go, maybe we don't have to behave like absolute animals at this game. Maybe it can be a really wonderful environment to take our kids to at 6 years old and not have to worry about what they're going to hear and think is a totally normal and acceptable thing to then go and repeat in the playground. So I think I really, really, really love the growth of the women's game, but I'm very, very and that's why we bring it up on the podcast. Is I think we as fans and we as people with a platform have a responsibility to ensure that it grows in the right direction and doesn't seep into old habits, you know.
Yeah, you did a wonderful surgical strike on Alan Brazil's suggestion that nobody cares about women's football by pointing out that it's factually incorrect, because apart from anything else, because women's football is the fastest growing sport in the world, isn't it? So how can you say nobody's interested in it?
Did I just imagine those 97,000 people I was in Wembley with for the Euros final? Was that was it just me and my husband in that crowd?
There was a painted background.
Yeah.
And
I
then
must have imagined it.
And then, oh, well, you know, they paper the women's games, they give away tickets. Do they? Because I couldn't get tickets. So who were these people they were giving them
and believe
to?
me, she's tried to get a freebie. Susie wishes they were giving away tickets. She'd be first in the queue for the freebies.
A shirt as well, I'll be there.
Well, I hope every club in the country is listening to this, because you might get one. But
don't encourage a Paul.
But what's it like for you going to the Brighton games? Because, I mean, Brighton are on the up.
Yes.
You know about the ethos and the ethics of this club. It's a it's a pretty nice club to support, isn't
Yeah.
it? Men's or women's.
Yeah, it's really special. I've loved coming. I bring my 4-year-old. She loves it. Were you just thinking of there was a lovely moment where my daughter loves Maisie, and we were out for a walk with Maisie, and my daughter started talking about her football team. And she was saying, oh, there's a girl called Katie on my football team, and she's really good. Maisie was like, all right, and then turned and was like, she started playing football. And we were like, no, what are you talking about? And she said, on our football team, Katie. She was talking about Katie Robinson, who used to play for Brighton women's team. And
My friend Katie.
Because of where we sit, it was the wing that she was up and down, and because it's her team. It's her team as
that
well.
is so nice.
And that's
It's lovely.
so
Yeah,
brilliant.
I
And
love that.
we've been, every time we come and watch Brighton play, it's a wonderful atmosphere. I just love it.
And they
I
set the
just love it, and
example
I
of
love
how
being
they-
part of it, and it feels really welcoming, and it feels like a really great place to be. And it's lovely that, not that I expect it of the players, and I think that's really important to point out. The thing we were saying about Millie Bright, about I don't think there should be any expectation that you get something signed or anything like that, but I feel like the players always have a wander round and will give a wave out, and that's lovely for young people to see them as people, and to see that there's that you can really love these players and love this club. And yeah, I've loved going to, it is obviously more often the Crawley ground, but getting nice good sizes, been there a number of times where it's sold out.
Yeah.
Great atmosphere.
Yeah.
Got a few chants going.
Yeah.
That feels exciting.
It's
That feels
really
powerful.
good. And as a club behind the scenes, they set the example.
Yes.
I think Brighton. They're really. You look at some of the other clubs. Arsenal are very good at it. That's why they've got that huge following. But I think Brighton are fantastic in terms of how they platform their women's team alongside the men's. And it makes such a difference point in the marketing, in the social media campaigns, just in how they're spoken about. I mean, my God. I know this is going to sound so easy for me to be sat here saying as a Leeds fan, mouthing off about Man United, but it's true. Look at the way Jim Ratcliffe talks about the women's team referring to them as the second team. When we're focusing on the first team. You mean the men's, Jim?
God.
He's just and making them get changed in these porter cabins because the men's need their all of that. It speaks volumes to the fans as well,
And it speaks volumes to, female fans of the men's team. If you see someone at the top going, well, we don't care about you, we don't care about people like you, it's just about it,
and by contrast, what Brighton put out.
Exactly that. It's about it being for everyone, isn't it? That's the thing. And I think that's how we're talking about the sort of toxic fandom. I think there's less of that when there are more women in the stands. And, men and women's football are for men and women. It's not that one gender goes to see one and one gender goes to see the other. It's about football. More football is good for football fans, regardless.
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
I think that just breeds that toxic fandom that we were talking about earlier. And I think, as you say, Brighton's done the sort of polar opposite of that, where it feels really supportive and it feels really cohesive. I was down at the buying some bits at the shop at the Amex before Christmas.
Yeah.
And if and I was sort of having a look at a few bits, and it was so great to see so many of the women next to the men in the same kit. It doesn't feel like
The
and then
branding,
also there's the women. It's like, you've got Frank Kirby right there,
Yeah.
and it feels like, oh yeah, this is for all of us.
Yeah.
This is about the team as a whole. It's not, here's the men and also the girls are over here. It feels like for everyone, and I think that feels really exciting as well.
Yeah,
Do you agree?
yeah, totally. And you feel proud to support a club that the players clearly. I mean, the fact it speaks huge volumes that players, recently look at Nikita Parris choosing to come here from Man United,
yes.
Frank Kirby coming from Chelsea, Vicky Lasant. We've got a World Cup winner on this squad. It speaks a lot about how appealing the club is. Both, we say it from a fan perspective, but also from a player's perspective.
Yes, it must be.
That this is a good club with good support for you as a player in the women's game.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. And Do you worry, though, that the women's game will turn into the men's game in the sense, we were talking about this earlier, but in the sense that the big clubs will just throw money into their women's operation and the league table will end up resembling the men's league table with Arsenal, Chelsea, Man City always dominating? Would that be a problem, do you think?
I think there's always a worry that is going to happen. For me, the worry isn't about which teams are going to be the top of the WSL. And, I think you're always going to have certain dominance based on size of clubs. I think where I worry is maybe the difference between the difference between the leagues, of how big a difference it is between being in the WSL and being in the Championship and then going Championship and below.
Yeah.
That is the difference between those in the women's game compared to the men's is massive, right?
Yeah.
It is a huge, not to be rude, but it's a huge drop. If you go, I mean, we were covering when Bristol City got relegated and what that will mean for them with the relegation. And in the same way, we did a live show in Newcastle, and the fans there, they were so passionate, and they have got their sights set on promotion because they know what it will do for their club. So I think there's always a little bit of a worry about, is it going to be boring, that it's going to be dominated by Chelsea or Arsenal or City for years. But I think my concern about dominance is about who stays in the top flight, regardless. Because I think drop it. We were talking about Lewis, and if you drop into the sort of League One, how different the investment is, and the visibility. That's far more dramatic than it is in the men's game. I mean, League One teams in the men's game, they are still so visible. They've got huge followings. They've got not as much money as the Premier League teams, but they're doing all right. And it's not that dramatic jump between the leagues.
I think it's also worth pointing out that hopefully in time there will also be teams that aren't necessarily affiliated and famous for a men's team. If you look at London City Lionesses, that's a really interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if they were in the WSL in the next couple of seasons. Yeah, they've got a huge investor in Michelle Kang. There's quite exciting stuff happening more in America really at the moment with the women's game, but where there's teams that are they're women's teams. They're not about being an affiliate to a men's team. So I think not to suggest that we don't want the Brighton women and the women from all the different top league clubs, but it will be interesting.
Yeah.
If as the game continues, there are these other teams that pop up that are, women's teams that don't have, don't come with that sort of fandom already. I think the London City Lionesses are really exciting.
That's a great
They've
point.
got a lot of sort of investment going into them, and I think that it's that they won't be the only team.
It's great you bring up Michelle Kang as well, because I think that's a huge part of it as well, isn't it? Is who's investing, and what are their reasons for investing. She's a champion of the game and wants the game to be elevated versus, say, we see it a lot in the men's game. People are investing, look at Newcastle or look at City or look at Chelsea. These are business acquisitions. Basically, and same with Man United. That with the Glazer brothers, that was and it was bad before then. It's bad after them, but it's which is terrible. I really feel for them. But I think that's a huge point. Is why they've been invested in, who buy, what's their vision. Is it just another business acquisition for them, or is it something that they're funding it? We even saw the other day, we put in our WhatsApp group, this couple won the lottery.
Oh yes, did you
have
hear
you
about
seen this?
No.
They won like 190 million on the Euro Millions,
and they've invested in Durham women's.
Their own women's team.
Well, you would, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
But it's just
great
wonderful,
stuff.
isn't it? Like they just we just want this team to thrive.
Yeah.
we're going to put a chunk of our money into it.
Something meaningful.
Yeah.
And isn't that wonderful?
So I think hopefully if we continue to have people with good intentions investing in it for the right reasons, I'm not as concerned about it going in the same way as the men's.
And can I just add to that? I think it's worth noting that it isn't just an altruistic thing. It isn't just like sort of an altruistic donation to invest in the women's game. I was at an event with Michelle Kang last week, and she was talking about the fact that the investment that she's making in women's sport, certainly the investments in America, are now, you know, they're coming back.
Yeah.
You know, that
Yeah.
money is coming back. It's not just that she's going, I really want to give my money to women's sports.
Yeah.
She is making money.
It's smart money.
Yeah,
From,
it's not,
from
it's not
women's sports.
philanthropy, it's investment.
Exactly,
isn't it?
Yeah.
exactly
absolutely.
that. And so I
Yeah.
think it's really important that when we talk about it, we're not talking about it as like a charity case. It's like, no. It, as you mentioned before, it is the fastest growing sports in the world. And if you're a billionaire and you invest now, I think that in 10 years you'll be pleased that you've made that investment. Because in the 2 years that we've been doing the podcast, we've watched not only our podcast numbers go up, but when we go to games, when we see, you know, we're not saying that the stadiums are full, but they're certainly getting fuller.
Yeah.
They're certainly getting busier, which is exciting.
It's like AI, it's a gold mine, you see.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
So what we're saying is invest in women's football and AI.
Yeah. So finally, what's next for you two in football? You're not going to do a Wrexham, are you, and take over a club and make a really...
God, I'd love that.
When we saw that
make
story
a
about
shambolic
Durham,
Netflix documentary.
honestly, that would be like. I genuinely think if we won the lottery, we'd be straight in, wouldn't
Yeah,
we?
absolutely.
Buying a football team.
Would you?
Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
God,
100%.
yeah. Love to.
100%.
Can you buy Lewis? Sorry.
Yeah, we'd be straight in. We're buying a ticket, and we'd love it, wouldn't we?
Yeah, great.
We've even we've had this thing on the podcast about we'd love to buy a pub and just show exclusively
Women's football.
women's
Yeah.
football and
What a great idea.
yeah, just the
place he goes.
It's that little thing of money, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's that little thing of money. I mean, what's next for us? We've got the Euros this summer.
Yeah.
We're going
Yeah.
to be all across that, continuing to sort of follow Brighton's fantastic rise, hopefully continued rise, but also seeing these clubs coming through. That's what's exciting as well, is seeing who's going to be in the WSL next year. And
Yeah, and the players.
Yeah.
You know, we love to highlight sort of new players that are coming through, and you know, people making their debuts. And
Yeah.
it's just a really exciting.
I think it's
time
only
going to
keep growing. You know, it's really, really exciting to be part of something that is growing at a massive rate and showing no sign of slowing down.
And I think the thing that I wasn't expecting about becoming a football fan was that now I feel privileged to be part of it, which is really lovely. And I'm just a fan. I just sit in the stands and I talk about it a bit on a podcast every week. But it's lovely to feel that, you know, that thrill when, you know, the fact that, you know, hopefully we'll end the season in the top 5.
Yeah.
And that feels
Yeah.
very, very
'Cause
exciting.
you're involved now, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're in it.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and break into the building next door.
Well, it's so nice for this podcast to have a friend now. I mean, we're like twin towns,
We
I think.
are.
You know?
Yeah, we're like a twinning society.
Yeah. We needed a friend, didn't we, Tom? And we've got one now.
Oh, it's been really fun
Yeah, this
coming
has been
on.
lovely.
Thanks for
so
coming in.
much.
It's been, honestly, I've loved having you in, and all the very best with the stage shows and the podcast
Cheers,
and
Paul.
everything else
Very
you do.
much.
Thank
It's
you.
our pleasure.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Seagulls!
Do you know that'll be the most popular bit of the podcast?